This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Queenpin 2.0, Part 1. When we left off, the round table meeting being held in Baptiste and St. James territory had yet to begin. The attendees were waiting on the lady of the hour, the Queen Bee. The elder matriarch was in her 60s. She was still in tip-top shape and didn't look a day over 45, because black don't crack unless you smoke it. And she'd made peace with her past and her promise. So stress hadn't prematurely aged her. She walked into the meeting room as regal as ever, rocking her still closely cropped hair, a tailored pantsuit, and 3-inch red bottom. All eyes were on her. She said, "Great, the gang's all here." Everyone around the table stood in deference, and they didn't sit until she took her seat at the head of the table. And when they were all seated, she looked over at her brother Samuel and said, "Now explain to me why she's still alive and you still haven't found her." 6 months earlier, when the Queen Mother, Pops Andy, and Q went to White Rock Lake Park in Dallas to meet Pops Andy's ex, India, she'd admitted that Jira was behind the plot against the Queen Mother. And Samuel's men were sitting on the family house in Trinidad, where Jira was supposedly hiding out. They were supposed to keep the house and Jira under surveillance and intercept her once the situation in Dallas was under control. They were supposed to snatch her and hold her until Samuel and the Queen Mother arrived to deal with her themselves. But somehow, she'd slipped away. 6 months earlier, when the two men approached India, the Queen Mother, and Pops Andy, one of them said, "Miss Baptiste, if you come with us, no one has to get hurt." The Queen Mother said, "Come with you where? For what?" The second man said, "Come with us so that you can meet with and talk with our boss." The Queen Mother looked at Pops Andy, India, and the two men, and pretending to be scared, she said, "And you promise not to hurt me or my husband?" When the first man, who was clearly in charge, said he can walk out of this park and go back to that Porsche, drive away like nothing happened, the Queen Mother slowly walked towards him, and then she quickly pulled the .45 from her back and shot India between the eyes. Before her body could hit the floor, she let off another shot into the second man's chest. But he was wearing a vest, so he took that shot, and as he recovered and attempted to pull his firearm, his head became a vapor. When Bella pulled, Anders pulled. He may have been in the doghouse, but he was one way about his wife. Pops Andy grabbed the ringleader, put him in a headlock, and put his .40 caliber to that man's head. At the same time, shooters started coming out of the woodwork. Gunshots was flying from every direction. Pops Andy was trying to get the leader out of the mayhem. They needed at least one of JR's men alive so they could get information out of him. He was trying to also keep an eye on his wife, because she was running in the opposite direction, busting her 2 guns, and he was only relieved when he saw that several of Samuel's men were providing her with cover. He refocused his attention on keeping control of the man he was holding, because something wasn't quite right. In fact, something was wrong. Very wrong. He was losing strength in his left arm, and his chest was getting tight. He was pretty sure that he hadn't taken a bullet, but the younger man was only seconds away from overpowering him. And just as he almost lost his grip on the man, he went down with a thud. LJ had come up from behind them, hit the man over his head, and just caught Andy as he was going down. LJ said, "Pops, where you hit at?" Pops Andy said, I don't know, I don't think. And before he could finish his sentence, the whole world went dark. When the dust settled, Samuel's 20-plus men and women team collected the 12 Ramirez men, some dead and some still alive, India's body, the Queen Mother's, and Pops Andy's guns, and got the hell out of the park. They were gone before there was any sign of DPD. LJ ran to his SUV, drove it across the grass, pulled up where Pops Andy was laying in the grass and the Queen Mother was standing over him. Then he and several of Samuel's men loaded Pops Andy into the back seat of the SUV, and they sped off to the hospital. The Queen Mother examined her husband from head to toe. Seeing that he hadn't been shot, he had a pulse and was breathing, but his skin was ashen. She knew that he needed immediate medical attention. She said, "Anders, You do not get to die like this. I'm still pissed at you, and you need to make it up to me. Do you hear me? Fighting tears, she said, you haven't even given me a chance to change. If you leave me, the whole world is gonna feel my wrath. Meanwhile, at the estate, Q was waiting for his cell phone to ring. He needed somebody, anybody, to tell him what the hell went down in that park when he was getting Melissa to safety. He paced while Angela and Mom Brenda lectured Melissa about sneaking out of the house and hiding in her Uncle Donovan's trunk. Finally, the phone rang, and it was his Uncle Samuel's lead man on the operation. When Q answered, the man told him that the meeting was successful, that they were headed to a game, and that he needed to go and see his brother. Q understood the code to mean that none of the Ramirez men had gotten away that they knew of, that they had at least one of them and were taking him back to the warehouse to torture and question him, and that he needed to go wherever LJ was, because there was a problem. Q and LJ had been partners on the police force back in North Carolina, friends since their very first meeting, best friends since their days as detectives in the Special Victims Unit and private investigators together for more than a decade. They knew one another. So Q knew that LJ would never call him if there was something wrong with his parents, one of his siblings, his wife, or his children. And LJ knew that in a situation like this, if he didn't call Q to let him know that all was well, Q would check his location and head to wherever he was immediately. So when the call came in on Q's phone, he was already tracking LJ's location. And when LJ's phone stopped at the hospital, Q kissed Angela, Melissa, and Mom Brenda and said, "I'll be back," and ran out of the estate. At his back, he heard Angela saying, "What is going on, babe? Oh my God, I hope nothing has happened to the Queen Mother or Pops Andy." And Melissa was saying, "I told them not to go. I told them not to go." In the SUV, Q ignored calls from everybody. Angela, Mom Brenda, Regina, his sister Anya, her husband Ron, even Maribel was calling him. All he could do was speed, pray, and hope. He was also kicking himself for not checking the trunk before they left the estate. It was standard procedure to check the entirety of a vehicle before any operation, but he'd gotten too comfortable. He thought because the estate was secure that he didn't need to do that check. And he would have never imagined that teaching his children and his nieces and nephews how to get out of a trunk, if they were ever in a position where they were being held against their will and in a trunk, would be used by his baby girl for an unrelated purpose. Just as he exited the highway near the hospital, his satellite phone rung, and it was LJ. When he answered, LJ said, "Bro, what you want me to tell these women? They freaking out, yo. They calling you not picking up. They calling me, I'm not picking up." I had to answer for Shotty, though. Q asked, "What you tell her, bro?" I told her I can't talk right now because this play's still in motion. Q said, "Good looks, L. I'm pulling up now." Inside the hospital, Q saw LJ and the Queen Mother sitting in chairs, shoulder to shoulder, while LJ was slumped down in the chair because that was the only way that the Queen Mother's little shoulders was going to reach LJ's shoulders. All of Q's crew was 6 feet and better. His mother's head was on LJ's shoulder, and he could tell that she was only one provocation away from dissolving into emotional distress, something he'd rarely, if ever, seen from his mother, the Ice Queen. When he approached, LJ looked up and said, "They think he had a heart attack. It's been almost 2 hours, and they haven't come back out to update us yet." Hearing that, Q slumped down in the seat next to his mother, reached over and pulled her to him, wrapped her in his arms, and held her, while she gave in to the overwhelming emotions that she'd only been able to hold at bay, right up until her son put his arms around her. If you know anything about mothers and their sons, then you already know. Samuel's men had 4 men in their custody, 3 of the men that the Ramirez team had recruited, and the lead man who was responsible for hunting down the Queen Mother. All 4 men were alive and under pressure, and with the details that they provided and Wise, and all the information that they gathered from the house that India was renting, they were able to put together the full picture. They sent men to the men's safe house, had LJ bring the Queen Mother there, and then they staged the photos that JR was requiring of his 2 generals to prove that the Queen Mother was in their possession and India was deceased. According to the men and all of the text messages that they'd read, That was the plan. They were supposed to off the men that they'd recruited in Dallas to help with the ambush at the park, leave them deceased in the safe house, take all of their phones and have a cleaner come in to dispose of them and everything else, connect with a techie and have all of their phones, data uploaded to the Ramirez server and disposed of. Then one man was supposed to stay there with the Queen Mother, while the other one flew to Trinidad to eliminate Jira. So Samuel's men made sure that everything that was supposed to happen happened, but they followed every person involved in the plan and intercepted them before, during, or after their part of the mission was completed, and either disposed of them or recruited them for the families. JR was in the DR, none the wiser. As far as he knew, the plan was going off without a hitch. And Jira was in Trinidad, waiting for the lead man on the Ramirez's payroll to fly to Trinidad, show her proof that her sister was deceased, and fly her and $1 million cash and untraceable bills to New York. She was going to fake her own death and get missing. So 6 months later, at the round table, Samuel said the lead man sent Jira the text telling her that he'd arrived in Trinidad and where to meet him. But on the way to the meetup spot, she got suspicious. She was texting and calling India and getting no response. Apparently, she wasn't in on the part of the plan that included India's death. She thought India was flying to New York to meet her. The Queen Mother asked, and how did she spot the tail? Samuel's right hand Marley said she didn't. She was paranoid, texting and driving, and she lost control of the vehicle. When she crashed, bystanders called an ambulance, and she was transported to the hospital. She gave the paramedics a fake name. So when our men got there, it took them a minute to figure out where she was, and when they got to the room, she was gone. Queen Mother said, and why did it take you all so long to clue me in? Donovan, speaking for the first time, said, because you're supposed to be out of the life, remember? Because you're supposed to be home with your grandchildren, watching them, playing, guiding them, teaching them stuff, cooking, stuff that grandmothers do. Not running around. The Queen Mother said, when I'm speaking to you, you'll know it. I didn't ask you any questions. Until I do, close your mouth. The only person who should be home with my grandchildren are their parents. You have 2 children at home. Neither of them has a mother, and you're here in a situation that you can't get out of. Then she pointed at Donovan, Salima, Stephanie, Tru, and Rennie and said, for the past 6 months, the 5 of you have been running around like chickens with your heads cut off, creating situations that the families have had to clean up. You can't possibly believe that any of you are ready to run one family, let alone 3. So this is what's going to happen. The Queen Mother looked at Stephanie and said, what you've done is forgivable. You are not unredeemable. But if you want to be respected in this game, you have to demonstrate stability and loyalty. You've put in good work, and I understand that you've worked through a lot of the issues that sent you running to Puerto Rico. But now, you've got to go home and face the music. She looked at Manny and said, she's cut off. Whatever money she doesn't already have in her possession is no longer available to her until you hear from her husband. Stephanie went to protest, and Manny said, Mija, I've told you already. We don't employ men who abandon their families. What makes you think that you should be any different? Stephanie said, can we discuss this in private? The Queen Mother said, you had 6 months to discuss it in private. The discussion is over. Get up, get your stuff, get on that plane that's waiting for you on the tarmac, and when you land in Dallas, there'll be a car waiting there to take you to see your husband and your daughter. Get in the car. Then she looked around the table at the heads of the 4 families and said, my sons are off limits. They do not work for any of you. Donovan went to protest. She said, they are not, they will not, and cannot be a part of this life. They are legitimate businessmen. And I don't care if they ask, beg, or fight to be a part of the business. Your answers are an unequivocal no. In exchange, I'll clean up this mess that you've all made. Agreed? And all of the heads of the families reluctantly agreed because they knew that they needed her. The Queen Mother looked at Donovan and said, "Now you get up, go get your stuff, and get on that plane. And when it lands in Dallas, there'll be a car waiting for you to take you to treatment. Get in it and stay in treatment until you can comprehend that your brother, Angela, Bernie, and Maribel were not all in cahoots with Veronica, scheming and implementing a strategic, intricate plot to steal your kids and kill me."
The enigma, the one they revere, ghetto goddess in the flesh, they gon' know I'm here.